Hey everyone, it's Book of Catherine, and we are back for episode 2 of season 2 of Thanksgiving Insider Movies. And that is the movies that I am the most grateful for, the ones that I'm the most thankful for. And I am really loving this series. And just like last year, it's turning out to be one of the most talked about series that I have of all my Insider movies. People talk about it the most. And when I went back to last week's episode, I started charting it out to try and talk to you about it this week, and I realized in just one little section I had 3 pages with like 32 bullet points, and I was like, oh, I hit a lot of topics. So if you have not seen season 2, episode 1, you really need to see it. I talk about a whole lot of things with the movies. I make a whole lot of observations about movies today and movies in the past. If you haven't seen it, you can see it right here. I will link it right here for you, and it will be down in the description box. Every time I say something's here, it's also down, linked in the description box for you, and then I post it on my Twitter feed. I try to always do that for you as well. So, and you'll find it in my channel and in my research links. I try to do that. I have a playlist called Research Links. I always post that, and all the things that I post on my Twitter feed are always linked in my research links as well. I make sure that they're there for you as well. So let's go ahead. Last year, I always talked to you guys about how you reacted. I'm not going to do that this year because there was so much discussion about so many different topics. It would take forever, and I could not hit on them. Possibly Yentl alone, like the reaction to Yentl alone was just ginormous. I couldn't even begin. It would need its own episode. It would take 3 hours. So I want to thank the movie schools and all the things in the academy and everything, and for all your reactions. So I would just like to say thank you and thank you. And I'm glad that you love the movies as much as I do. That's all I can say, because you wouldn't get involved in talking about it unless you loved movies and the power that they have. All right. So let's go ahead and let's get on to week 2. So this week's capsule is, I guess I would say, Octane. That way, if we had to name a theme for this week, I would say it's the Octane. It's the Octane capsule. Yeah, it has adrenaline. As far as all the capsules go, this one has the most adrenaline in it, I would say. So let's go ahead and begin with number 1, which is Concussion. You're like, well, that's not... You'll see what I mean as the capsule goes along. This is the one... you'll see what I mean. These are the power ones. These are going to be the ones that make you go, oh, yes. Ugh. So the first one is Concussion. And this has Will Smith in it. Oh, I'm not going to spell it right. This is why I need... Oh, I'm sorry, guys. It's really late at night, and I can be a writer all I want, but it doesn't mean I spell things correctly. Not anymore. Not with all of my health issues, so just doesn't happen. I don't do it on Twitter either. I don't write correctly on Twitter at all. That's just the way it's going to be. So anyway, so number 1 is Concussion. So this has Will Smith in it. It's one of the more recent movies that's going to be on our list. We have movies that go all the way back. This is one of the more modern movies. Oh gosh, it's so late at night, but we're going to do this, right? So it's one of the more modern movies. It has Will Smith in it. Now, one of the things that I've learned about Will Smith is that Will Smith only does movies that are really good. If you remove all the movies that have his son in it, like just take his son, and you know, we all have blind spots when it comes to our kids. If you take out the movies that have his son, you end up with movies that are incredibly good. I think there's just one movie that I would say, I think there's like some movies that... There were like 2 movies that I'd be like, just like Michael Douglas. All of his movies are really good. And then there's like 2 movies that you're like, oh, shoot, right? So Will Smith, he just picks, even if they don't do well, they're still amazing movies. And the reason that they don't do well is because the media has chosen to they either, for whatever reason, whatever is going on behind the scene because of politics, they'll either choose to pump it or not. Today's movies, we were talking about, that is something we talked about last week, is we talked about how we're wired for the hero's tale for 10,000 years or a million years, whatever, how long, I don't know what all the science is of how long we've been around. We've been writing and wired for the hero's tale. Whatever society you go into, no matter where you go, on whatever continent you're on, you will find mythology written, the hero's tale. That's just what we wrote. That's what humans wrote over time. It's the tales that we handed down. We wrote story after story. You can look at hieroglyphs and it's the hero's tale over and over and over. So why is it that in the last 20 years, like, they haven't been writing the hero's tale and you think that they're successful? Well, the reason that is because they have a megaphone. We've learned through the crash override networks and things like Gamergate, which I have that video right here. You'll learn that all the things like the reviews and things like that, it doesn't mean that the movie did well. It's just they have the megaphone. So they get online, they give good reviews, they own the media outlets, they own the AstroTurf, they own all of it. And so whatever they choose to push towards you is what you're going to see. Whatever they choose to say did well is what you're going to hear did well. We no longer drive the market. We no longer choose what we like. If you go onto Netflix, if you go onto Amazon, they don't say, here's what everybody's watching. No, they choose what you're going to watch, don't they? They shove what's going to happen in front of you. And so if there's a movie that did really well, you'll never hear about it. If there's a movie that moviegoers love, you'll never hear about it. Some theaters will keep a movie in the theaters longer because they want to get going. And for example, Dinesh D'Souza's movies, like his movies did so well at the box office. It was like the #1 selling documentaries of all time. Did you hear about it? No. Did the media say anything about it? Absolutely not. You will never hear about it. And when his newer movies came out, they said even less because it didn't fit a certain agenda. And so it's very, very interesting how what the media, we literally kind of have a Big Brother thing going on where there is a media, has a megaphone, and Big Brother is saying, watch this. This is what you will like. This is what you will love. This is what you will eat. This is what you will do. This is what people like. We tell you this, and then we're down here and we may like all this and we may love all this, but they'll never let you see that. This is the reality they create for us. So we love the hero's tale. Like, we love it. We're made for it. We're wired for it. We are dying for it. And they are up here and they're just like, this is not what you're going to get fed. And the reason they're doing that is because there's a whole political thing, and I've gone on my other thing on the channel. So what I like about Will Smith is he does not care about this. He doesn't care. He chooses his own scripts based on whether or not they're good. And he doesn't care. He won't compromise his ethics or on script writing for what he chooses to do. For example, Hollywood likes to do this thing where they publish different birthdays. Like, there are certain Hollywood starlets where they keep on publishing their birthday, and I'm like, oh, they're 33 again? Well, congratulations, you're 33 again. Oh, yay, she's 33 again. Wow, how many times have I seen that story that they're 33 again? But they can do that because they have this major megaphone and they can just change the numbers. It's just a number that they can change, just like they change the YouTube numbers and everything like that. None of those numbers are real, right? They can just change everything. So it's very, very interesting that Will Smith, to me, was honest about his birthday. He turned 50 and he was like, I'm turning 50. He just doesn't compromise. He sticks to reality. And so he chooses good scripts. So when he did Hitch, like, Hitch was an amazing, amazing film. So when he did Concussion, I was like, I'm going to go watch that film just because he did it. When he does a film, I always, always watch it just because he does it. And Concussion was an incredible, incredible film. Now, I might have seen the film anyway just because of my experience having a concussion. And I will tell you this right out the gate. There's an amazing not documentary, but a speaker. Do you remember how Glenn Beck got really, really sick? And he said he finally got, after going to all these doctors, he finally got diagnosed at a certain place. And I found the speaker from that place. He actually spoke on concussions, and he gave an amazing speech on concussions that I think everyone should hear about, because concussions are they happen a lot more than you actually realize. And I really think you should watch it. It's right here. I'll include that and down below. So that speech, that speaker, he really, really woke me up, because he said, emergency rooms are not going to treat concussions. Emergency rooms are only there if you're going to die. You always have to go see a doctor afterwards. And I didn't know that for any of my accidents. Like, they just checked me out and they said, you're fine, go off. So I didn't know I was supposed to go to a doctor after all of those emergency rooms. If they tell you you're fine, they never say go see a doctor afterwards. Always go see a doctor, especially for a concussion. Go see a doctor afterwards. And that's very, very important. Now, when I saw Concussion, it finally explained to me so much of what was going on with me. I saw Concussion when I was in the middle of a concussion. It took me about 4 years to recover for my head to stop being swollen after a massive concussion, after my head went through a windshield. But there are concussions that can happen if your head doesn't even go through anything. There are people in soccer where you can actually have a concussion. Soccer players can bang up against each other's bodies, boom, and just the bodies ricochet in the air. They can hit like this, and the heads don't even hit, and the head will have a concussion just because their bodies hit so hard that the brain just bounces in the head. And sportscasters will be like, ooh, that's going to be a bad concussion. Like they say it behind the scenes, like that's going to be a bad one. And their heads don't even touch, and the soccer player's head has a concussion just from the body slam. So you can get a concussion just from the body slam. And for that reason, you really need to see this movie. And also, if you are really into the whole free speech movement, if you guys are like into the whole like Steven Crowder kind of thing, if you're a big part of Clean the GOP and that whole thing, you're going to really love Concussion. You're going to really, really love Concussion because it's based on a doctor who was an immigrant. And he really, really is like, I moved to America because doctors and the healthcare system allowed me to do research. And now that I've done the research, the press won't let me publish it. Like they won't let me do anything with it. And this is what I came to America for. But they do a really good job with CGI of demonstrating what happens with a concussion and why when you get older, you know, if you can, I really recommend that you see that, what's his actor's name? Let me find it. That's it, Gary Busey, 1 year after the accident. If you see that video, he's on the, let's see, I think it's The Tonight Show. Just look it up, 1989, Gary Busey, 1 year after the accident. And I'll try and put it on my Twitter because I only get 5 of these guys. So, and you'll see, he looks really healthy. He looks like a normal, healthy, happy guy, just like I looked after my accident. And now you see what Gary Busey looks like. You know, that's what these concussions can do. And you see all these football players. Now, he had been in sports. He had a lot of concussions. That's what traumatic brain injury does. And so now they're doing sports with these kids over and over and over again. And these kids are not getting breaks during school and they're just pounding their heads. And that's it. That's it for life. It's the worst thing you can do to your children, and this explains why, and so does that video that I gave you. So it's really important for our society to understand concussions, understand how they play, not to mention it's just an amazing movie. It's absolutely a phenomenal movie. It's so good. I was just like, this is one of the best films Will Smith has ever done. And the reason it didn't get such a big play is simply because it went against the narrative. It does threaten the NFL. The NFL did not want this story getting out. But it is like, to me, it's like the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers went against all of technology, rewrote the books of science in order to take flight, to give the world flight, for a man to actually fly. And they broke all of science in order to do it. And that's what this doctor did. He actually broke all of science in order to discover concussions. And unfortunately, the world didn't want to hear it. Like, big money didn't want to hear it. So I would encourage you to fight big money and actually see this movie. And I really praise and look up to Will Smith for that reason, because he, you know, did Concussion and he went against that. And that's what movies like this take. Stars that are that big of a mega power that it doesn't matter. And then it drives the film and gets them out there. And that's why celebrities do have a lot of power. They can do a lot of things and they can shift the world and they can use it for good. And so be aware of that and try and take advantage of it. So I was very, very grateful for Concussion in so many ways. It taught me. I have done so much research on concussion, but it's very, very hard to access. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am for that movie. Cannot even begin to tell you how grateful I am for Concussion. So let's go ahead, moving on to movie number 2. Okay, I love this one, I love this one, I love this one. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So again, I'm going in alphabetical order because there's just so many of them. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So Honey, I Shrunk the Kids with Rick Moranis. And you'll remember Rick Moranis from last year when we did Ghostbusters in October, Insider Movies Season 1. So Rick Moranis is just amazing. And in the 80s, he was just such a big star. And he was huge and people loved him. And part of that is Ghostbusters. It just catapulted him into superstardom. And so they used him for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And I'm so glad they did that. So it was just a movie that lived on forever, and pretty much until 1992 came. And, you know, Google came and kind of did the whole Blair horn until it drowned everything out. So it's a big part of American culture, and they even put it into theme parks and everything. So Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is huge because it really used movie magic. So it came out in 1989, and it really, really used movie magic in enormous ways, and it had sequels and everything like that. And the reason why is because it was good for kids and it was good for adults. Everyone loved it, for kids, for adults, and any age could watch it. Any age could watch it and really, really enjoy it. Remember that things like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the writer of that, C.S. Lewis, said, you want to write a story, a good children's story is excellent to read from age 5 to 50. That's a quote of his. He says, a good children's story should be something that's fun to read and excellent to read at ages 5 or 50. And that is definitely Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It is exactly like that. And so it uses quite a few movie magic tricks. Remember how I said last week that the reason why I don't like computer graphics of today is because everything looks 2D. All I want is 3D. Like, that's all I want is 3D. And I think that's because 3D it really feels much more like reality. You just want something that feels real. Well, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is full on reality. If you've ever been to Disneyland, and the other side of it, if you've been to California Adventure, well, I don't think is it still called the California Adventure? They have this thing called Bug's Life, a Bug's Land. And they have an entire section where they have they make you feel like you're the size of a bug. And they have big watermelon seeds, and they have big Christmas lights. And you feel like you're walking through the set of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. They shrink the kids down, and they have, huge size objects. And it's an adventure. It's a real adventure, and it has kids dealing with real life issues in the middle of it. And the thing is that I mentioned this when we talked about Pretty in Pink in my previous Insider Movies. I said what I loved about Pretty in Pink is that it didn't portray sales. It didn't have homes that were trying to sell you something like, this is not your house. This is not your life. Remember, Modern Family is all it is a sales pitch. Modern families are not rich and wealthy. They're all just they're living paycheck to paycheck. They've got a ton of crap in their house, all made from China. It's stuffed to the ceiling. They don't have any wealth. They're living paycheck to paycheck. Everyone's hoarding, or they have nothing at all, and they're living on scraps, and their houses are a wreck, or else are really, really sparse, and they're tired, and they don't have these model homes and these Lamborghinis and these gorgeous things or they have a lot of pets. There's just all different ways Americans are living, but they are not living like the Modern Family. That all those homes are model homes, and they're gorgeous, and they all look like KB homes. They're all trying to sell you something and sell you this life, and they all make you want to go to Home Goods and buy. And that is the goal. That's the whole purpose, is that all these shows today are advertisements for you to go to Home Goods or go to Ross or go to Macy's, go somewhere and go up your life. That's all they're trying to do, is up your life. Everything is an advertisement today. Well, what's great about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is they do the exact same thing. They really portrayed life in the 80s as a normal house and a normal household with normal kids, exactly how kids. It could have been any school kid in America in a middle-class family. It could have been any neighborhood, and they really were honest about how families lived and how kids and siblings got along in middle-class America. They weren't trying to tilt any of that. They weren't trying to sell anything, nothing like that. The closest they got to that was like when they got near a Coke can that was big, it was actually a Pepsi can, or it was actually a Coke can. That's as close as they got to advertising, which was really rather nice. And also, I think in there they may have Love, If I Remember, which you will be rather uncomfortable with, most likely, because they don't do that anymore. They absolutely hands off on all the love. In China, they actually make kids stay a few feet apart from one another. They actually have laws on that in the schools. You have to actually stay separate. They actually have a term for it, like it's something against modern love or teen. They have a term about teen love, and they actually teach against it. They want kids focused on their schoolwork, and so they actually make the kids stay separate. There's no touching allowed. There's no romance allowed. And so they push that in our movies. They don't want that going over in China. They don't want any love. They want their people to be driven. And so they pay Hollywood to make sure there is no such thing as romance in our movies. And of course, we're not supposed to be having babies because, you know, Agenda 21. So it will be a little bit disconcerting for you to run into a teen love story that's like, you know, closer to what teens actually go through when they run into each other, a little bit awkward and things like that, which makes it all the more charming and all the more wonderful and all the more reason why it was such a hit, because it was so freaking relatable. I know when I was growing up, remember I said that my parents just had all these VHS tapes and then all these DVDs and all these things, and that's all we were allowed to see. And I'm realizing how lucky I was when I had this like barren desert where I was like deprived of water. The one thing was this room where we were just, you know, kind of like that one thing in New York where they were allowed to watch movies. I was allowed to watch movies, and this movie was amazing. It really did. It reminded me of what things were like with boys at school, and that was excellent to see. You need that mirrored. I talk about mirroring in one of my videos about having emotions mirrored, and I really felt like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids mirrored so many emotions that I went through in school when I was interacting with boys. And it was so good to see it on screen, because I certainly wasn't getting that from my family or my parents. And it was really, really good to get that from a Hollywood movie screen. And that's what Hollywood is for. And that's what storytelling is for. That's what books are for. So that was wonderful, and I was really, really grateful for that movie, as was everyone in America. It was just a supernova hit. It was supernova. And of course, when, you know, Agenda 21 came along, it was just erased. Google just dropped it from our, just like a memory hole, just dropped it. So please, you know, you'll love it when it comes back. All right, on to movie number 3. Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh my gosh. It's okay. This is a movie I discovered later on, like after it was made. Overboard, I discovered it after it was made. Like, oh, I wish I discovered it earlier. Like, I really wish I discovered it earlier. And when you see it, you'll be like, well, no wonder she loves it. And I remember I saw it just well after it was made, and then I forgot about it for a while, and then we discovered it again for Insider Movies when I was doing, well, before I started filming this or whatever, and I introduced it back to the group. And as I watched it with the group, it was like a whole new experience. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, I just was like, it was just hysterical, because the whole group was just like, don't you own earrings? Like, well, okay, so I'm going to actually show you. It has Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. Now, when we did it for our little Insider Movies group, it hadn't been remade. Now it's been remade, and there's no way I have a religious devotion to this movie. Such a religious devotion to this movie that I won't even watch the trailer to the new one, because there's no way they can touch it. There's no way they can touch the original. But I'm going to actually show you the trailer for it, because it's less than 2 minutes long. And when you see it, you will understand. You will understand why. You will understand why. So let me show you the trailer. All right, here we go. I can't wait to do reaction videos with you. I'm trying to get software that doesn't actually, like, invade my privacy. So, could you see that? Did you see all that privacy that they do? They could actually go in and edit and delete your personal emails. Watch out for that with Google Play. Like, if you do an app, they'll actually go in. If you read the permissions, read the permission, it says it'll go in and edit and delete, like, your medical info. It has the permissions to go into your phone, into your calendar, and it says it can change, edit, or delete your personal information, like anything in your email. And I'm like, okay, I need to find an app that doesn't do that to actually do reaction videos for you. All right, here we go. So, yay.
Somebody call for a carpenter? That's my wife's department. Mrs. Grant Staten III.
Can you believe that?
Grant, I'm on the phone!
Oh my God, look at that.
I'm not paying for your mistakes.
And she always got it. You haven't got a single thing on this earth to do except for your hair. She had power.
Look at how she's dressed.
Taste.
Oh, what is this gelatinous muck?
Style.
Are you going to really
Oh,
squeeze it from my
look at that. Oh,
Seems a mystery woman was picked up by the Elk Cove garbage town shortly after midnight.
Excuse me, miss. Can you tell me your name? Of course I know my name. It's
Annie!
this missing link person is not my husband.
Welcome home, baby! Whoa! Hey, look who's home!
Hang on, River. What is it I normally do?
oh God. Oh, I hate identity politics. This might not play well now. 2 years ago, this played just fine. Oh, it's such a good movie.
Goldie Hawn. Kurt Russell. Overboard.
Oh God, I even love that song. That was such a good song. Go Jim Daddy, go Jim Daddy. Oh, that's such a good song. In the ballroom community, they use that a lot. Oh gosh, now with identity politics, it's all like, oh, it's stupid. I hate China. I hate China because it ruins everything. It was such a great movie and it did so well and it was hysterical. It's just funny. I think actually it's kind of like based off of Taming of the Shrew, and Taming of the Shrew was huge for, hundreds of years. And so it's just kind of, I think it's based on Taming of the Shrew, and that was hysterical, and I thought it was hysterical, and everybody thought it was hysterical, so I still think it's hysterical. I'm sorry if it gets up under your burr, because I'm like, oh, now it kind of looks bad. And I hate that. I hate that they've taken so much from us. They've taken so much freedom from us that we can't even enjoy a joke. Like, we can't even enjoy a joke, and I just love that movie, and I'm still dedicated to it, so I still love it. And it's just absolutely hilarious. So it's just hysterical. So anyway, I just love the costuming. I couldn't believe it when I saw it again. And I was just like, I remember I was just watching for the first like 10 minutes, I sat there just in silence going, did that have an influence on, like, did that have some kind of an influence on, because I was just like the red lips and the hair, like the hair being up and in the, and I was just, and I was like, how much did this influence who I became? And I was like looking over at my jewelry and like looking back at the video and like looking over at my jewelry and looking back at the video. And I was like, but what I love about the movie is that it really does address this idea. It was made in the 80s. It really does address the idea of materialism. Like that's the main scope of the movie. Materialism was a big theme in the 80s. And it addresses the materialism and addresses the 1%. In the movie, she's the 1% and she treats people like a slave. Like, I was watching some of Beyonce's videos recently and I noticed that she has people in the background. She has kind of servants in the background that she's just like, pick up my stuff. And no one really catches that. But I'm like, the 1% is starting to have all these like people serving them and no one's really paying attention to that. And I was like, if we have a slave trade, would anyone notice? Like, would anyone notice? We literally have all the mechanics going on of a slave trade, but would the world know? Who would tell us if there's a slave trade going on? If a child, which it's happening, is sold at $1 a minute, children are being sold off at $1 a minute. $1 a minute. With children being sold off at $1 a minute, and we know that children were a major part of the slave trade back in the day, children were always used as in the Industrial Revolution, children were a huge part of actually doing work. They were a massive part. That's why like child laws were put into place. Like, if the slave trade was happening, would we know about it? Would we be told? And so this thing really approaches the idea of the 1% and the snotty attitude of the everything can get away with and how you treat, servants and slaves and being up here versus being down here. And it's this whole thing of like, humility. And it just addresses that and kind of like evening out society. And can you be happy when you're here? You know, is that what makes you happy? And that you have to get past all that. You have to get out of the identity politics and actually listen to what it's about. And it really is more about what makes happiness. What makes you happy? Is it money? Is it money, or is it interpersonal relationships? What makes you happy? And that's why it was so popular and so famous, is because it strikes at things that people really deal with. Why is it that in third world countries, kids are happier and have less of a rate of depression than kids here? Why is that? Why is it that in places where kids have less, depression rates are lower? Why is that? Is money really the answer? And Overboard kind of just goes at that in this amazing comedic way. And Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell were doing a ton of movies together back in the day. And I think this is by far my favorite. Like Bird on the Wire, they were doing a bunch of them. Hands down, my absolute favorite. And probably because she inspired my fashion, for sure. But I'm so grateful for it. So grateful for it, because it just told me, like, in an era where, you know, where I know a lot of our generations that came before me, we're still learning about World War II. A lot of our generations and our grandparents came from nothing. And there is this idea of like, oh, we have to move up. But this movie helped us know that even if we don't move up, we'll be okay, because that's not what matters. And thank goodness for that, because now we've hit this. And yes, we had made it big, but then we hit this. But it's not what matters. We're happy. And movies like this trained me for that. So thank you, Hollywood, for that movie. Thank you. Thank you so much. Like, really, thank you. And those are the writers that got run out of Hollywood. And you can see why. You know, it goes completely contrary to what they need now in order for socialism to exist. They need, you know, and I'm so, so grateful. So, mwah, to the writers, and mwah, to the producers. Just mwah, thank you. All right, on to movie number 4. And by the way, I wanted to prove one last point on what I just said about Overboard. If you'll notice, like, the Google user rating for that movie is 91%, but IMDb is only 62%. Yeah, IMDb is owned by Amazon. They tweak those ratings. Like, if you look at the Crash Override Network's background talk at Twitter, the little hate networks or whatever, you'll see that they're like, bye, I had to come back and I had to go write my reviews. Like, they had to go and write reviews. They're writing reviews for Amazon and Twitter and all these companies. They go change everything for the little matrix and stuff like that. So, like, it's always interesting, like, what the people actually think. They all love this movie. But when you look on IMDb, you'll notice that for, like, the best movies out there, the ratings are always extremely low. So I never listen to those ratings. I never ever, like Dinesh D'Souza's big, huge documentaries that are absolutely monumental and huge and the best selling of all time, Rotten Tomatoes will give it like a 0. Why do you think that is? But the user rating is like 95. Yeah, so I never listened to Big Brother, ever. I never listened to any of those critics. Besides, if you've ever listened to those critics actually talk to a director, you'll find out what their IQ is. Seriously, you'll find out. They're no Roger Ebert. Go read some Roger Ebert and find out what a real movie critic is like. Like, seriously. I mean, I know that he was, you know, also, you know, liberal, but not leftist. But, you know, at least he had a slant and everything. But dang, at least he was a critic. Like, at least he... Yeah, we'll get into that later. So, yeah, we'll get into that later. So now on to number 1, 2, 3, 4, on to number 5. So 13 days, and 13 days came out in, I believe, 2001. Now, this one is actually, it does have Kevin Costner in it, but Kevin Costner's not in a main role. They just did Kevin Costner's name attached to it to get people to go to see it, because it's mostly character actors, and that's on purpose. This is about the Cuban Missile Crisis, the 13 days of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And there is another documentary that I do kind of recommend watching to kind of see as a background. A lot of people don't know this story. I think it's like the Man I Never Knew or something like that. I'll link it right here so that you can see it. That's definitely worth it. And you need to go see that documentary, because it's the guy who's the director of the CIA for the Kennedys. That's some serious crap. Like, I found out, I talked about it on one of my videos, and some people told me in DC, they were like, how did you know that? Nobody knew that. And I was like, oh, I guess this is a serious documentary that people really need to see, because no one apparently knows the stuff that's in this DVD. And they were just like, how the heck did you get a hold of that information? I'm like, it's out there on a DVD, like it's out there in a documentary. So you really need to see that to find out how the Cuban Missile Crisis actually came around. It's those sorts of things, and like how Vietnam actually came around, like the Kennedys actually, that could have been prevented and things like that. Shocking things that you would never actually believe. But we need to understand the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it really breaks it down. And you need to understand nuclear war. And the biggest part about it, the biggest part about 13 Days is that you have got to learn diplomacy and leadership and what to do in a crisis and compromise. And that is very difficult to do. It goes over the sorts of things in leadership that we have lost today. This is the kind of thing that we used to have in Western politics that have all been stripped of us. And this is going to be an excellent reminder. It's a nail biter, it's a jerker, but it's all history that's kind of been lost and shut down the memory hole. This is a very, very good like screen grab of it, and just walks you through step by step. And they don't really have to do much in order to actually make you, because it was for the whole nation. And so it is, you just have to live the history and you will be like, but you have to understand that I always say that's the difference in generations between Generation X and all the other generations after it, the millennials and the Z's and everything. Like Generation X and all the generations above it, and then Generation X, is that Generation X and above it all lived under nuclear threat, under world nuclear threat. Yes, it's come back, but they're not aware of it. The media doesn't talk about it. They have no clue. They don't have to do drills underneath their desks. They don't know that they're not doing actual drills where they're going underneath their desks. They didn't live through 13 days. Right? Their parents aren't talking about, they aren't watching those things. They're not being shown in class those horrible things that are on YouTube of showing like a nuclear blast coming through and turning them into dust, which is what like Generation X was shown that. They had to see that. They had to sit through that in class and be told that could be falling upon them at any minute. Like before the Berlin Wall fell, that's what all the kids were shown. And there's a big difference. That's a big difference. Now it's just all talk and things on Twitter and yelling blah, 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 and Kim Jong-un and Rocket Man. That doesn't mean crap. That's just another day at home for them. So they're like, oh, parents are yelling. Like, how's that any different? That doesn't feel like, you're going to die at any moment. It's just every single day, it sounds like everything's going to go down. So it's just everyone's crying wolf. So this is a very, very important thing to see, because we need to see leadership again and what it looks like and what actually happened and what nuclear war looks like, how close it came, and what it looks like to actually have world leaders do an actual compromise, and what it looked like to have a communist country, just that interaction and all the different people who had to talk and how close it came and the mistakes that were made. It's just an excellent movie. And what I really liked about it is that they didn't use high-powered actors in the biggest positions, because they wanted the story to be the star. And it was. The story was the star. They let the story come forward. So they let Kevin Costner be on the side, and they had character actors come forward. And I forevermore remember those character actors. They became beloved to me because they did such a good job with all of these roles. I just fell in love with all those character actors because they were willing to step up and go there, and you could see them just let the story take the stage. And so I really learned about 13 Days. I heard about it in my school books, but it never really was real to me until I saw 13 Days. And I remember even when I moved on and became like, I just always, this again is one of those things where it's not an insider movie. It's one that's for me that I have always pushed and said to people, you really need to see it. It's one that I've always said it needs to be seen. It's not one that Hollywood directors are pushing. It's one that I've always pushed as something that needs to be seen. So yeah, it's always been something when parents ask, I'm like, just definitely use this one as a teaching tool with your kids, et cetera, et cetera. I'm certainly happy for it. So that's an excellent one. All right, next. All right, I'm going to go out of sync a little bit again because I really, really love the last one. So I do love these last two, but the last one is so supercharged. So second to last is War Dogs. War Dogs. War Dogs is really important to see. It's hysterical. It's absolutely hysterical comedy. It really is funny, and it has popular actors that are used today. You're going to see them all over the time. Let me get their names for you again. I keep forgetting them. Right, Jonah Hill and Miles Teller. So Jonah Hill to me is just like an HBO actor. So Jonah Hill, he's been in so much, and he's big modern day comedy star. He's in so many things, and I know that Hollywood loves him nowadays. He's like a Hollywood favorite. The Academy absolutely loves Jonah Hill. I get it. They love Jonah Hill. He just is there. He is absolutely that anti-hero. He is absolutely that. He is not the hero story. He's the opposite of it. In War Dogs is exactly that. It's the anti-hero story. They are not the hero's tale. They are the opposite of it. So why in the world am I grateful for War Dogs when it's the opposite of it? It's the anti-hero story. They take two criminals and they put them up on a pedestal and they circle around. And that's exactly what they do with Jonah Hill all the time. He totally plays a criminal or a bad guy, and they put him up on a pedestal and they make the whole movie about it, and he just glees in it. And there's a number of characters just like Jonah Hill. There's a whole like group in Hollywood where that's what they do, and it doesn't mean that their movies do well, but it's definitely what they push, and the big megaphone says go watch Jonah Hill in all his movies, right? And that's not to say that Jonah Hill is a bad guy. It's just that's what he's used for. So he did an excellent job in War Dogs, and so did Miles Teller. And the reason that I was so grateful for this movie is because not only was it written well, and not only was it done well, I remember being like, oh my gosh. Like, the only reason I saw it was because I was trying to get rid of my HBO subscription. I was trying to let it run out, and I was like, fine, watch everything I can watch on it that I possibly want to watch. And I was like, well, let me try this movie. And I was like slapping my husband going, oh my gosh, I think I might want to watch this with everybody. Like, oh my gosh, this is good. This is good. I can't believe. And he was just like, he's working. He's like, what is going on over there? And I was like, this is so good. Because it was such a well done movie, and I wasn't used to modern movies being done well. That's not the norm for today. This was actually a well done movie. It's usually really good in the front, because they spend a lot of time on the front, and then it kind of goes through the middle, and then the end is just awful. Like, the end is just makes no sense. It just loses it all, and just even that Tom Cruise movie, like it could have been so good when he did it with Emily Blunt. It was so great, and then they lose it at the very end. They had 30 seconds that just bombed the whole movie. It could have been it could have been an all-time classic. It was big when it came out, but it could have been a classic for all time if they had actually invested in that end, and they just didn't want to because they're tired and they're worn out by the end of the movie. And they just invest so much in the beginning and not at the end. And the end is where you need to spend the most time, because that's when people decide if they want to see it again. Hello? At the end is when they decide if they're going to tell people about it. At the end is when they decide if they're going to watch it again. At the end is decide if it's a classic. The end is when everyone decides everything about how they feel about it. The end is it's the freaking entire thing. It's the whole pie. And it's the thing that's left in the dust today. It's absolutely left in the dust today. And I don't know if they're doing that on purpose or what. So this movie actually was good from beginning to end. And I could just tell from the attention to detail. Actually, absolutely well done. Now, it's not for kids. It's definitely for like adults. But the reason why I'm thankful for it, not just that it's well done, the reason that I'm thankful for it is the education that it brought me. So, and there's Bradley Cooper in it too, and he plays it. I loved his character, actually. He was so creepy in it, and is a weird character for me to love, but I was just like, I enjoy it. So what I loved about it was that it taught me about, after I did all this research on 9/11, I think I saw it when I was in the middle of the 9/11 research. And I didn't understand government contracts. I didn't understand them. I didn't understand why government contracts were such a big deal. I didn't understand why they would do 9/11. And I know if you're not with me and you haven't done my 9/11 research, you're going to have to catch up and watch this playlist here. And I apologize, but the research is it's so conclusive. It's just completely conclusive. I so apologize if you haven't seen it. But it's just so clear cut. It's out there. The Freedom of Information Act has been it's been 20 years now, and the Freedom of Information Act has just given it all up. It's all out there. It's just all out there. The Freedom of Information Act has been a wealth of information. It's out there. It's out for the public to process. It's been processed. It's just for every one good video of research, there's 20 others that they've made like it with similar thumbnails. And it takes someone like me who has nothing but 24 hours of pain and crapped in bed to actually watch all 20 videos to find the one that has the real Freedom of Information Act videos, and that has the time to listen to the whole tape and find out which one is the one that has all the editing in it and which one has, not editing and has all the stuff in between the edits. And then pick out that one. Oh, this one has no edits in it. Oh, crap. That tells the real story. All the others are edited, and it is a shocking story. So, but you couldn't understand why Rumsfeld would have all of these government contracts lined up before the event and what that meant. And I didn't understand any of that, and I didn't get it. I really didn't get it. And I would see these hearings where they talked about like 82 billion or something, like these atrociously large numbers that I didn't understand any of that. War dogs will wake you up as to what these government contracts are and why. When I read you off in the previous video, not the one before this, but in one of my politics videos, I read you an excerpt. I believe it was 73 votes or something. I read you an excerpt where I actually said, from Doug Weed's book, I read where it said the military contracts, I believe, and the banks were both backing Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton. They were backing both of them, because war is the name of the game. That's where the military contracts are. And you don't really understand that until you watch War Dogs. You just don't. You don't understand why 9/11 would be so important. You just don't. You don't understand why when Reagan ended the Cold War, he ended all the contracts. The world was at peace. Like, why would HW start up Kuwait? Why would there be a campaign by Hill and Knowlton? Like, there's so much research. You can look at my Twitter feed. Like, why would they start up the war machine again? War Dogs will explain all of that to you. Why there's so much. There's 40 ad campaigns started on America to make Americans proponents of war again in the Middle East. Just all to lead up. There's a trail of evidence that, the Kuwait War was just to get us ready for the next 10 years to build us up. They were already starting the stages. It was all the FBI, all of it. So really tragic. But once you see War Dogs, you get it. You finally understand why. It's the money. And the money is the same as the banks. It's the same as Wall Street. It's all the same thing. It's just this, churning money pot. And you can understand why they wouldn't want POTUS in right now, because there ain't nothing going on. Like, there ain't nothing going on, so it's really important to see that movie. And War Dogs taught me so much. But notice it came out after they were out, like they came out after everything. It was like at the end of the Obama years when it was all paid and everything. And it's impressive that the movie got out, so, I'm really grateful for that movie. It taught me so much, even if it was the anti-hero. I don't care. I am grateful for it. And I'm sure there's a lot of other guys like that out there. I am very, very sure that there's a lot of other teenagers out there doing it, because teenagers are smart. They're really, really smart. So be aware, because the FBI could do it. You'll see. Learn a lot about the FBI too. Watch. Yay, another one I like. I think this capsule is like the most recent of all the capsules. So this is a 2010 movie. So of all the movies, like none of these are all like 87 and earlier. This is like the most recent capsule of all the capsules. So I think the latest capsules, the ones that go furthest back, are going to be on Thanksgiving. Oh boy, is that going to be a shocker. You guys are going to be like, what? So Unstoppable is so good. If you haven't heard of it or you hadn't seen it, oh my gosh. So this has Chris Pine and Denzel Washington in it. And I absolutely love it. And there's somebody else, I think Zoe, what's her name again? Oh, Rosario Dawson. I always get her mixed up with Zoe. So, because they seem to Anyway, their hair is so, have you noticed that? Anyway, their hair, they wear their hair the exactly same way. So anyway, so Rosario Dawson's in it, and so Chris Pine, Denzel Washington, they both do Unstoppable. They say it's based on a true story, but actually the true story is, it's about a train, a runaway train, basically. And they do identity politics, like everybody involved in the whole story was white, and then they try to make everyone in it, like they try to do the whole identity politics thing. It's amazing, but they never released who actually did it. They actually never released the name of who actually did the train, right? So, but they do have video of what happened, who ran it down, like everyone who tried to stop it, but it never did the things that happen in this movie, like going around curves and all that stuff. But who the heck cares? The movie they made based off of this, mind blown, like mind blown. It's just a phenomenal movie. It's a phenomenal movie. So what happens is they have some people mess up. And the train gets away from them, and the train's like it's supposed to be like the gas is pressed, which actually did happen. Like this person like hit two brakes and then hit the gas, the controller did. And so it got going, and the train gets going, and they kept trying to chase the train down. And these people actually had to jump on the train while it was actually moving. They had jump on moving trains. Like all these people are like running down. The video is absolutely incredible. So, and they're really unsung heroes in this whole thing. It's really quite sad because it was hard to find the video. Like they really didn't, even though the movie happened, they really didn't like publish the video all that much. So they deserve huge credit for doing that. It's scary to jump on a moving train that fast. That's absolutely insane. But the movie itself, for a movie made in 2010, I gotta say, it was extremely well done. It was extremely, it's like, thank you. Like, thank you to everyone involved. Thank you. And I love Chris Pine, and I love Denzel. I feel like Julia Roberts. I'm like, I love you. I do. I love both of you. And Chris Pine's grown so much. Like, I just saw him. I had to get Netflix for some friends for some of the things that they were doing. I had to watch them. And I could tell right away. I was like, Chris Pine's gotten better. Like, he is looking like, wow, like he's come a long way. I was like, go Chris Pine. Well done, Chris Pine, who I already liked. It was so nice to see like a regular guy. Thank goodness, Hollywood. Thank you for having a regular guy when he did Star Trek. It was so nice to finally not, to have like a regular handsome guy. Like, it was nice to have that again. I had missed that so much from Hollywood. So there's a reason he does so well, and it's perfect what he's doing in Netflix and the show that he's doing in the King role. So, but moving on, this movie, Unstoppable, Denzel just did a beautiful job. They all did a beautiful job. And the movie is heart-pounding and well done. And for 2010, I was really shocked. And that's just so rare. It could have fit back in the 80s just fine. It could have fit back in the 90s just fine. It felt like it was just came out of nowhere, this movie that was just made suddenly out of nowhere. And I was like, where did you come from? Like, nobody's making movies like this anymore. It's kind of like when we saw the Rio Grande, when we saw the one that we talked about in Insider Movie 6 for October. And I'll link that right here. When that came out, and we were like, where did that come from? This is exactly like that. Unstoppable was this absolutely incredible, unstoppable movie. And I've seen it 100 times because it's just a good movie, just like Austenland, when you just want to sit and see this amazing movie. I'm glad that you really enjoyed it. So Unstoppable is a great action movie, and so it's kind of in the lines of Die Hard. Unstoppable is a great action movie. It's not at the Die Hard level, but it's in that vein. It's made, it goes in that category of a good solid action movie. It's excellent, and it just wasn't shoved as much, and I understand why. It's actually the hero's tale, and that's why you'll love it. You go ahead and watch it and see how much you'll love it, because it's the hero's tale. But not only is it the hero's tale, it's done just so well. It's done so well, and I can't say enough good about it. I just can't say enough good about it, and I was just so grateful for it, because you could just always watch it. You could always watch it. And that's why I saw it. I saw it because I was on a plane. Like, I was trapped on a plane and they had it playing on a plane. You know why those movies are there. They have movies there because they're recycling them, because they went straight to DVD or something like that. Like, those aren't the biggest hits movies of all time. So I was trapped on a plane. I had to see Unstoppable. And I was like, oh, this is a phenomenal movie. Like, thank you, thank you, God, for this. Like, this is just like, like, thank you to Hollywood. Thank you. Like, on. So yes. So those are the movies. So that's why I kept it last, because I was just like, it's just an amazing movie. It's such a rush. All right. So we have, for the capsule, we have Concussion, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Overboard, 13 Days, War Dogs, Unstoppable. They're all kind of like, they're all kind of intense movies. It's going to be a bit of an intense ride as opposed to some others. So that's kind of what this vein is these are the more intense movies. I guess I kind of feel like this capsule is in the more intense vein. So I'm glad that you loved last week's. I'm glad that it made you talk so much. I have a feeling that I gave you things to think about this week again. That's what the glory of movies are. They make us talk. And I ran into a guy today. I went out there. I got to teach a dance lesson. I was so happy about that. And I went out there to teach a dance lesson. I met somebody who was working next door, and we talked, and they were like, oh yeah, we love to talk about anything as long as that's not about religion or politics, right? And I was like, yes, somebody else who understands it. And movies is one of the things that we can talk about. There used to be a show called Siskel and Ebert that sat down, and all of America would sit down and watch Siskel and Ebert, who would sit down and talk about movies. That's what we can do with each other. We can sit down and we can talk about movies and discuss them, because they affect us on a personal lives. If they are done well, if they are written well, and they touch us at a human spirit, they can really lift us up and change us for the better in a human society. But we have to get back to starting telling the hero's tale, because every human wants to do that. In Western society, we all want to better ourselves. We all want to reach for our best. We want to get there, but somebody has to tell us that we're able to do it. And if Hollywood doesn't, if Hollywood tells us that the bad guy is always going to win in our lives, then every one of us who's ever suffered abuse, we're all going to believe that the bad guy, they're going to get away with it. And that is a horrible thing to be telling us, Hollywood. That is a horrible thing to tell us, that we will be victims for the rest of our lives, and that our abusers will be the ones that always win. That is a crappy thing to do to us, Hollywood. We don't want it. Don't believe Big Brother when they keep telling you that it's really doing well. It's not doing well. That's why theater numbers are down. Please give us some hero's tales so that we can be lifted once again, and we'll start going to the movies again and get out there. I know some of the directors are out there trying to make movies again, and start picking up the scripts that the CCP and this megaphone is telling you are boring. They're not boring. All the movies that I'm giving you are not boring, are they? They're all the hero's tale. And I know they're the bad guy versus the good guy, and the good guy wins. I'm sorry, but your favorite movies of all time are that. If you think about it, that's really what it is. Hate to break it to you. That's just where it is. All right, you guys, I really love you so much.